Hi, everyone. Welcome to the GoldFish Report. I'm your host, Louisa. Today is Tuesday, October 1st, 2019. And this is our 394th GoldFish Report. This is a very special GoldFish Report because since Q came out, which was at the end of October 2017, right after the Las Vegas, in fact, I think that was the first post was regarding the Las Vegas false flag, which, you know, if you watch our channel and you watch Jim Fetzer and our POTUS reports, you know all about false flags. But you also know that when we talk about looking at the world events, that I usually put on my Q glasses, which I'm going to do for just a minute, because this is what it means to see the world through Q, through the eyes of Q. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to be looking at Q comms and Q posts, and we have a specialist with us here today, and we're going to look through the eyes of Q in a way that nobody has ever seen before. We're going to start with my co-host, who is here to join me to do this, is my co-host Steve from Vienna. Thanks for joining me, Steve.
Hi, everybody. Great to be here today.
And of course, the main attraction is, okay, everybody knew last week how Greg's going to crack up. Everybody knows how triggered I was last week, but this was for a reason. It was a vetting process. And we have joining us today Greg Hamilton, who is a Q proofer on Twitter. His Twitter handle is Beautiful Day Patriots United. And Greg is an expert he's really the guy that talks to Q through the proofs, through the timestamp and gap codes of the proofs. Now, this is a unique perspective because Q has, for everyone who's followed Q, you know that Q has always made reference to this, but there's very few people that really get this down to a science. So first, let me welcome Greg onto the GoldFish Report, and thank you for the honor of this opportunity, Greg. Welcome.
Well, Miss Guppy, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. And you've just turned into just an absolute shark, and I just didn't see it. And so thank you so much for this opportunity.
Absolutely. I'm telling you, I was never so triggered. But you know what? We both had to make sure, if there's one thing that has repeated through the Q community, is the idea that this is about the message. And, you know, Greg put me through a test that he does everybody. It wasn't just me. But I was triggered, but it's okay. But I didn't let that make the decision. What ultimately was the deciding factor here was I responded because that I wasn't going to let him trigger me, because the message was the most important thing. And that was the test. And then why don't you explain what happened there, Greg? Because it's fun. Our viewers know how triggered I was. Go ahead.
Well, there's a lot of things about Q that happens, and literally what I'm being able to do is I've learned a brand new language. And this is the language that I'm trying to show and teach people. And when you see a new language, it's literally chicken scratch. You know, we can't read Chinese unless you've been in China and have studied it. And that's what QMAP is doing. And so for me to explain this new language to somebody, I needed somebody that has pure confidence within themselves, that is willing to learn, and is willing to be able to have, like I say, the confidence with themselves to know that we're going to be talking to some very, very important people in the world. As a matter of fact, the most important people in the world. And if you're not confident with yourself saying that I deserve to be here, then I would be wasting my time trying to convince you of that. So we do a thing called noodle baking. And what we do is we try to fry your brain so hard that you're either going to accept this new reality or you're going to go back to sleep. And that's what's happened is I had to make sure that you are fully aware of who Q is and what it's about and where it's going to go so that we can move forward, because this is advanced discussion for advanced Q followers only. Others will get this as the years go on, but I need to know and talk to somebody that is in the top echelons of Q knowledge.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you for that compliment. And you wanted to make sure we were a fully baked noodle.
And you were the only one. You've been the only one that's passed the test, hands down. Wow. Most people have actually begged for me to stop.
Oh my
And the
goodness.
thing is that people think that it's me doing this, but I have to convince, and what I think you saw, that it's not me that is setting up the time in between the tweets for that message to be there.
Right.
I'm not making something up. I'm not pulling a Q drop out of thin air and saying, ha ha. It's President Trump is talking to me so that I will deliver the message to you, the American people.
Right.
And that's what Q has been saying from the very beginning. Learn our comms.
Okay, let me stop there for a second and just screen share your Twitter page so everybody knows who it is we're talking with. For people who are, so I'm sharing the Twitter page right now, and they can see this is your beautiful day, Patriots United, which is a very beautiful, code or nickname. And then here you have, these are your tweets, and you talk about, let me tell you, I've tried to figure out, some of them I could follow, and then you throw a curveball in your very next one, and it makes it a little bit, it just blows my mind how you have really figured this out. I don't want to start with these unless you want to, but you sent me a few in advance to take a look at, a few proofs. And this is an example of what his proofs look like. You'll see here that he starts out, wasted time, not on cue. Time difference between this tweet and deleted tweet from yesterday is 22:16. Q dropped 22:16. So that looks pretty straightforward. That's a very straightforward one. This message is to the people who are going to interview me today, or about to interview me today, and later week we have Q Blessings. I talked to Q, and I will talk with you soon. That's very cool. Q&A session with the Anons. Oh, that's very nice. How do you like that?
And once again, this is being set up. We are always watched 24/7, 365. We know this. And so I find it so funny in the Q community how asleep people still are. They will sit there and say we're spying on Obama, Hillary, and all these other people, but they think that they're not being spied on themselves. So if we have the capability of spying on the most important, powerful people in the world, why are they not able to spy on the least important people in the world?
Yep.
Exactly. And so this is pretty straightforward though, because there's times you have to do mirroring, and so this next one here, which was done about an hour ago, next month will be 11/3. Timestamp, POTUS Trump's 3rd November of his presidency. Timestamp and gap code. Time difference between this tweet and his last tweet is 26 minutes. Q drop 26:0. Q drop 260. Whistle a 00. Q drop 26:00. Now, nobody knows how to figure that out. Where do you get the 0? Where do you get this? So what do you want to explain about this? Because you have a science. How do we follow what you did here?
Well, if we look at President Trump's tweets in the last few days, and we go and look at how many times he used the word and spelt out the word in capital letters 0, everybody's going to be amazed. Okay. When we try to look for connections and we try to see the clues, they're there. But if we don't know that there's even clues being thrown out at us, how can we possibly then decode it?
Okay.
What's happened here is that I've been in training. I've figured out the basics of this maybe 10 months ago now. And what's happening is that a lot of the times in my past, the proofs are not for the public. They were for the black hats to see that somebody has finally figured out the code.
Right.
And so I was trolling, and that was my mission, was to troll the black hats for the first 6 months, to drive them nuts that the secret is out there and that I'm not going to quit. During this time, there was a lot of training that happened where I was learning things and shown things, so we practiced those codes. Now that we are in live time, those codes are going to come back into existence. As the example, 0. 0 is a very powerful tool. We can use as an add-on, and we can use it as a subtraction. Math could not happen without the number 0. Okay. All math would be irrelevant.
Okay.
So 0 is extremely important.
I think we need to wind back a little bit. I mean, some people that are watching this have no idea who Q is.
Okay, so very good, Steve. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to screen share. Okay, do you see this window, Steve?
Yep.
It's Time Magazine. had published the 25 most influential people on the internet. And Q, of course, was one of them. And here
but
they
not
talk.
everybody reads Time magazine. I'm just saying that some people.
This wasn't. Well, Steve, I'm getting there. And
yeah.
So Q we don't know who Q is, so that's the answer to your question. But Q came on the scene on the 4chan board, who then switched to the 8chan board, which are community boards. And maybe Greg can explain a little bit more about that. But here you can see that Q did make a big impact when he first came on. Big enough to be named one of the top 25 most influential people on the internet. That's really huge. And
Greg, when did you start getting involved with Q? When were you first aware of it?
Just one moment, Steve, if you wouldn't mind, because what I'm trying to set up here is to show the people. Do you see this yellow vest movement, Steve?
Yeah.
Okay, this is. Look at them all wearing the Q shirts. They're writing Q on their yellow vests. And these are the protests in France. So this is all over the world. This has been, Q has been a real, it's an anomaly, okay? Here you see the Q shirts at the Trump rally. This is one of the Q posts here. So what is this Q? And everybody who has been on the internet and following people reporting Q has an idea that there's something going on. And what we understand, and then I'm going to ask Greg to kind of weigh in on this. What we understand is that there's a civil war going on within our country, within the United States, but I think it's happening in many countries across the world. So putting this into the perspective of what you're asking, Steve, and what I talk about on POTUS reports, is this civil war is between a very bad faction of people like the Nazis who came here from after World War II and Project Paperclip, and they came to infiltrate our country. We have an agenda. Sorry, Greg?
Fact.
Right. And so there was an agenda, a very bad agenda to destroy this country. We've seen it. I've reported on this on the POTUS reports. That there was
not just the United States, the world.
Yeah, but
yes.
I'm starting with the United States because that's where the Q is centrally located out of. So the plan was to destroy our Constitution, which the Obama administration started to do. It was to social engineer us, to engineer these false flags, false flag operations, these shootings and things, to take our Second Amendment away, literally to destroy this country, and then and there was a very nefarious agenda scheduled. So what we had was an enemy within. And the United States Constitution, the U.S. military has sworn an oath to defend this country from enemies, both foreign and domestic. And this was their moment. Their moment was that they had an enemy within that had infiltrated in a free and open society. What is the greatest threat we have? We have, of course, this is what I have on the banner of our Q page and of our Facebook page, our news page. Is this quote by President Kennedy. This all goes back to even President Eisenhower was trying to warn the world. But what is this? It is the message that President Kennedy was trying to share with the world about a plot in this country to enslave every man, woman, and child. And before he leaves that high and noble office, he intended to expose this plot. Basically, we were hijacked by the central banking system, by the fake Jew, Khazarian Jews, who have been running the world. And I have to say that, they have been committing crimes against humanity in the process. So because JFK tried to warn us that there was this inside faction that was, attempting, and their agenda was to really destroy the United States. It was the obligation and the duty of the military to take back control of the country. And from what we understand, Trump has been recruited by the U.S. military to do this in a legitimate manner, because the alternative was, and Greg, I'm going to let you take it from here. We were looking at the point of no return right in our field of view, and most people have no idea of this. So Greg, why don't you take it from there?
And everything that you said is exactly the stuff that I had been studying before Q even showed up. So I have been on the outskirts and a conspiracy realist my whole entire life, from the earliest age of elementary school. And this causes problems with society, with me fitting in, but it only makes me dig more. So when Q finally showed up on the scene, I found Q through doing research on YouTube. I was following BP Earthwatch, who is just a phenomenal YouTuber. Mm-hmm. And he had said something about Q, and I bet you I listened to him say something about Q 2 or 3 times before I was like, well, I trust this guy, I like his work, let me go find out what he's talking about. I went to the link and saw a Q post, and the very first Q post was somewhere around the 300s, and I instantly understood what I was looking at. I knew this was a military operation. I didn't care if it was a LARP or if it was who was doing it. I knew that the information that I was looking at was real.
Was it the timestamps? Was it the timestamps? Was it the wording? What exactly in it?
Let's say when they would talk about, you know, okay, if, like during the Q drops, they talk about the Hillary Clinton Foundation. They talk, and so I know all about how crooked she is. You know, I've been studying about Benghazi before Q was around. I was talking about how very few people understood that there was a gun running operation in Benghazi, and that's what this is about. And Stevens was actually trying to do gun running on the side to make a little extra money on his own, and he got busted, and that's why he was executed. Because, you know, these guys stab each other in the back constantly. So there's no loyalty with thieves. So This is what the Benghazi thing is really about. We still want to sit there and pretend this other thing that, you know, she just didn't give him protection. No, she murdered him. But anyway, so this is the type of things that I've always done. I followed the Kennedy assassination. I watched how the Bushes were involved. I've watched how the Bushes were involved in World War II. So anyhow, I knew that these people were not our friends. When Obama was in office, I became a full-fledged prepper. I bought every gun I could think of, every food item. I buried things in the ground. I tried as hard as I could to be prepared for what was getting ready to happen because I knew it was happening. So when I saw the Q drops, once again, that's when I knew everything was legit. So it wasn't about timestamps. I didn't know anything about any of that. I just became a Q follower, and I just followed along.
You're on the same page, basically, or he was on the same page, or it is on the same page.
Right. And so, I mean, I didn't understand the clues or, you know, the undecipherable stuff then. But anytime they talked about, so what was happening, so now that I'm watching the Q drops, I have only a phone. I have no computer. And so I wasn't able then to go do research on the things Q was talking about. Also, I was, you know, I had no speaking power. So all I could do is just basically comment on somebody else's tweet page, and that wouldn't really get anything. So I wasn't really a participant. I was just following along. What happened, I was listening to a show. I looked up in the sky. I saw this circle and a Q mark around the sun. I took a picture of it and I posted it on my Twitter page. The very next day, that same picture shows up on the Q drops, 2438. And the title of that Q drop is Beautiful Day, Patriots United. Thus, the name of my Twitter page.
Cool.
So I made the Q board before I was even, I had no clue that I was going to be a decipherer or a decoder.
Right.
Now, all my past, because I followed decoders in the past, I didn't realize how much training I had and how much knowledge I had. Right. I knew I had this stuff, but I didn't realize at what level I was at.
Okay.
So because I couldn't do research, I did nothing but study the Q drops just as Q drops. It would say, learn our comms, timestamps have meaning. There's a million different things, you know, uncipher the map, all these types of things. That's what I focused on. Nobody else was focusing on the actual QQs, if that makes sense. Everybody else went out and researched.
So what your specialty has to do with the timestamp and the gap code. This has to do, you're saying that there's about 43 points to a proof or any combination of these proofs.
There's a Q drop that says there's 43 connections to the Q map.
Okay.
One of those connections is, if we look at Q drop 1155, it says timing between tweets.
Okay. Do we have 11:55 here? Let's see. Yeah. Okay. Let me screen share this. Hang on one second.
Antifungal leaf bread.
Antifungal leaf bread. Look, there's some really funny language that's used on the Q. They're called bakers. They're called autists because this was these were back channels. This 4chan was a back channel. This wasn't like being on Facebook or being in a group on Facebook. This was like back channel stuff. So these are like real asocial, or I don't know if I would say asocial, not like in a negative way, but not probably the most socially they're not normies, in other words. Okay. So
we're not worried about politically correct language. That's for sure.
No, but there is a language that Q uses, and I'm trying to find it. And yeah, so I have
and that's part.
Up. Okay.
That's part of the misspelling and everything. It's to teach us something different. So if we're going to sit there and worry about how people spell words, which is into my advantage, then we're going to start being too locked into a box. If everybody starts using misspelled words, then we're starting to go on a language of symbols.
Yep.
Yes.
And that's what the cabal uses, is a language of symbols. See, they don't use the English language or any written language. They communicate with each other through symbols. But ironically, the letter A is nothing but a symbol. It's a symbol that we all agree on that sounds like ah.
Well, the whole language, in fact.
Right.
But look, I mean, they use gematria to an extent. You don't use that at all, right?
There is no proof that gematria is within Q drops. If people will argue, but it says A equals 1, B equals 2. And yes, and that's to keep it very simple.
Simple numerology.
With gematria, you put in your code and there'll be a lot of different things that you can choose from.
Right.
So I'm not saying there's a Bible code with gematria. Gematria is real and it's a legit language. I just don't believe it actually will, once again, that might be a coincidence, but it's definitely not comms, because you're getting to choose and pick what it says.
So you're saying there's a distinct difference between coincidences and comms. They're not the same.
Absolutely. Not even close.
Okay. I have the post 11:55 up. So you can start describing that whenever you'd like. But can you give us a little bit more information about the difference between actual comms and things that are coincidences? Like why have both, and do they interact? What do you know about that?
Let's look at the Q55. We've got two different messages that are happening there. We got, I believe, 3 sentences or 4 sentences? So the first sentence says, focus on Supreme Court.
Right.
And then it goes on talking about the timestamps. So within that one Q drop, we have 2 separate messages that can be used later in the future. If we read between the lines, we have to know which line we're going to be looking at.
Interesting. So you're saying that because the reason Greg wanted to do, as he said already, this interview was so that he could teach people how to do this themselves. So we're trying to pay very close attention, folks, because he's giving you the keys that he's learned. And so you're saying here that, look closely, it says future proves past. So these and then comms understood ? There's so much in here. Let's start with future proves past. Almost all these Q drops, right, were intended because they anticipated they'd be offline and they'd need to refer back. Is that how we're supposed to understand future proves past? Because we have to start getting into the whole psychology of this now. Future proves past.
Now the future proves past is everything's been pre-planned. Okay. So these, let's just go to just the advanced people right now. Some of us know that some of these arrests have already happened, and that the public isn't aware. There's going to be a new phrase called being John McCain, and they're just going to be disappearing. Okay. And there's going to be a national. We're going to give them a great funeral and everything, and this is to save our republic for the sheep. The people won't get to know about a lot of the executions that are getting ready to happen or already have happened for many years in the future. many years in the future, our society will not be able to handle this next step of reality. We will, as a society, accept the fact that these people were bad and that we're going to arrest them. But I don't believe we're going to really, as a society, accept the fact of the treasonous acts of how many people will be held responsible for this.
You know, that's very interesting you say that, Greg. I mean, Louisa, you and I spoke a couple of years ago, I think it was, to some military people, and they, in fact, and I won't mention who it was, or it was a long time ago, but they, in fact, mentioned, my question to them was, this was actually off the air, was why don't you just come out and tell people what's going on? Just you know, throw them into the cold water. People will cope. Humanity is strong enough to take it. But their answer was to me, their answer to me, and you're a military man too, their answer to me was, no, they had statistics. There'll be blood on the streets. 60% will go insane. There'll be murders. There'll be unrest on the streets. It'll be uncontrollable. And that's the greatest fear. So, I mean, I'm coming around to that. At the beginning, I was thinking, no, just look, just give them the truth. But maybe this is the best way. This is like the soft transition. This is like giving an alternate story in order to allow them. What it is. Yeah.
You see, Steve, you've said it many times to me, how many times you've walked around, and, you know, it's amazing how pervasive the mainstream media's
it's all encompassing.
Brainwashing is on people in Europe there.
All over the world. Wherever I travel, it's all over the world.
Steve travels all over the world.
In fact, the news stories, no matter what language, I don't read all languages, but you can basically understand where you ask, you know, you can get things. Right. They're off the same sheet. They're the same headlines across the world.
Well, here we go. We've got the three triangles, as Q talks about. We've got the power structure of religion. We've got the power structure of government. And we've got the power structure of media. Yeah. So the media controls the worldwide media. We only focus on America's controlled media, but the same people that control America's media is also controlling Australia's, England's, the rest of the world's.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so this is really why Q had to do it this way, because the ones who are awake are the ones who are going to find this, the ones who are going to be, like, the end isn't for everyone. These are...
Can I just interrupt on that? Because this is really important. I am so upset and mad at the ignorance of people that will say, give us the truth and all the truth. Because really, let me ask you something. Do you want to see what people do to other little children? Do you want to really know these type of things? Do you want to know what the Pope is wearing and where he got that material from and how it was attained and for what purposes it was attained?
Yeah.
Do we really want to know that what kind of a hot dog party was at the White House a few years ago?
Yeah.
No, we say we do, but when we are exposed to these type of truths, it crushes our soul. It literally takes the innocence out of humanity in ourselves.
It's true.
And this is why I fight so hard. Is I want to protect people from those kinds of harsh realities that are about ready to be faced upon humanity.
Right. Why is Q there then? Why is Q there? What is it? Is it a communication to speak to the right people? Is it a soft preparation for the half-truths that are going to come out? What do you think?
I believe what is happening here is because when everything comes out, because we know these things are happening, these criminals are terrible people and they're going to be arrested now. And so what it's going to appear to the normies and people that are, so brainwashed, they're going to see it as a military coup takeover of President Trump arresting his enemies.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening, but it's on such a bigger, deeper level. This isn't about revenge. They're attacking him for revenge, but he's getting ready to arrest them for the benefit of humanity. And for that to be fully understood, everything has to be documented so that he can be understood by world leaders first.
Yep.
You see, they have to be on this plan too. World leaders, if we look at this stuff, if we start really looking at the news, just last week when the Australian, I believe, Prime Minister was here and President Trump said tippy top shape, the guy starts busting up laughing.
Yeah. That reverberated around the internet. Yeah. Twitter, everywhere. Yeah.
You're so right, Greg. You're right. Spot on.
So they have to be on board first. They have to know what's going on. And these are proof. These are positive Q proofs in itself. Like that says, the news will unlock future events.
Right.
But we can see that this, and so this is what's really happening. It's so that it's all documented that this was not a vicious, because, hey, before Q came around, and if Q did not show up, okay, if Q did not show up, I would be on the internet telling every single person not to trust the government, that this is a one world order government takeover, and I'd be scared to death. Even though I don't think I would be able to see President Trump and everything what he's doing, because I just wouldn't be interested.
Well, would you agree that it's also a panacea, that is also for people who are awake, that they're on our side inside the higher echelons of the military? Would you say?
Look at the hope it's given the world.
That's right. The hope. It's the hope.
I'm a prime example. Like I said, I mean, I would have been literally on the internet screaming of anti-government.
The pressure would be different now. Yeah.
Well, this is the thing. We have a civil war within the government. So we have the positive faction of the military, and we have the old guard, the deep state that it's known as, which is the old guard. Those were the cabal, as it's also been referred to. And let's not forget that Q also said this is about good versus evil.
Mm-hmm.
These people are sick. We're talking about. It's essentially, I mean, you can look at it as a cult, but it's huge. It's many cults, but they all serve the same Luciferian agenda. Okay, in one way or another. We're talking about the fact that there's no secret made, that if you have ever read anything in the Bible, you'll read that Satan was cast down to earth, right? Or Lucifer. So here we have the evidence, and the way they ran things and the way they did things was always in the dark. They inverted the truth. They hid the truth plain in front of our eyes with the triangle on the dollar bill and in millions of other ways. They have, these gargoyles. At the top of Notre Dame. Steve, you were there right after the fire, right?
Yep.
And those gargoyles, they say they're there to scare away the evil spirits.
They are the evil spirits.
They are the evil. Yeah. So
exactly.
Satanic ritual abuse and things that are happening. What's happening with Jeffrey Epstein? How this is tying into it? Because Jeffrey Epstein was like central to that was like the glue that held it all together, because they were all blackmailed.
The blackmail glue. Yeah.
They were blackmailed through pedophilia, through horrific things. There was trafficking. This is all reported. Have I seen this firsthand? No. But this is what's being reported. So this is what's alleged. And let me just make that very clear. But I don't think they're going to start an operation like this just on allegations alone. I think they know everything. Q proofs do say we have everything. Right, Greg?
Well, whoever is in charge is going to always have that. Isn't that correct?
Right.
But, here's another funny thing, though. We still, we're giving President Donald Trump a little bit too much credit in the sense that, all presidencies are a bought seat anyways. The illusion of voting is absolutely ludicrous, just ludicrous in America. But so the president never really gets put in position without it being okayed by the powerful underlings that we don't see.
Right.
How else did Obama get in office? Please, with a name like his, right after 9/11, was absolutely insane. How brainwashed the people were. It was a joke. They actually literally made it a joke on the American people. How stupid they were. We even used to on the news call him Saddam bin Laden because we didn't know how to say
Osama.
Baron Taro correctly,
Well, let's take a look at this. Did you want to talk about this proof anymore on 1155, or should we move to?
Move forward.
Let's move to the DEFCON 1, the 21439 proof. It says antifungal leaf bread. This is so funny. I'm going to screen share this. This is funny. This is why you have to get familiar with the Q language, when you become familiar with that. This was an interesting one. This is when the missile attack, the assassination attempt happened. Is that correct?
Yes. Could you? Which Q are you looking at? I'm sorry.
DEFCON 1.
It's the DEFCON 1 stringer marker, January 7th, 2018. This was its perfect, plausible deniability to the world, yet ultimate confirmation to us. Timing
Exactly.
between tweets. This is what you're saying. You're talking about the Q. So he's telling us, he's telling everybody how to understand the comms. The comms,
Right.
not coincidences, the comms. So it says the timing between tweets, the missing and replaced letters. This isn't a game. Trump himself is speaking to us. I mean, we are the autistic fueled engine the world needs right now. This is exactly what this post is saying.
And what bill did he sign on the 1st of October?
Had to be, which year?
Just now, just yesterday. Last night he signed the autism bill.
Yeah, it was on. Yes, exactly. It was on. Well, it was on. Here, let me look at the blog. It wasn't called autism.
Well, he tweeted it yesterday and then again retweeted it again tomorrow. And once again, this is just a small little time. That's a coincidence.
Yeah.
There's a coincidence that's a great example. Okay.
Right. It was.
And it's totally plausible deniability. How can I prove that?
This is National Dyslexia Awareness Month. Yeah, so that was one of them. National Energy Awareness Month, the proclamation, and what else did the president do? Yeah, and then he nominated individuals to the post today. Substance Abuse Prevention Month. So this is what's happening right now. But yeah, so that's like tipping. It's like tipping your hat.
Exactly. It's tippy top. It's a tippy top coincidence.
But there's also an element of humor which I enjoy very much in the Q drops too. I feel that the Q group is trolling the deep state as well, because they always announce well ahead of time what they're going to do. I guess it's some sort of satanic law they have that will come through if they do it. So the trolling that goes on with Q as well it's like baiting them, saying, "Hey, we're going to do this to you. Let's see if you can stop it." There's that element too, which I like very much.
It's absolutely the case, and it's necessary. I've just talked with you a little bit about this on our phone calls, is that President Trump and the Kennedy family, the Trump family and the Kennedy family, these are cabal families. They know the secrets that have been handed down through thousands of years.
Right.
They have been using numerology magic, which is in the Bible.
Yep.
But the church tells you not to touch it. But there's many problems with using this kind of information in the wrong hands, as we can see that's happening. So what's going on right now is that President Trump is using all the same magical tools, all the same numerology, all the same sacred dates that people are unaware of, and he's turning it back on them.
Right.
And he's taking and making it a mirror. It used to be Friday the 13th is a bad luck day because that was the day the Knights Templars were attacked and executed by the cabal.
Yeah.
So they make it sound like it's a bad luck day when they were really celebrating a victory in their history.
Yep.
Well, we're taking that back now. We are no longer, so that's just one example of how they trick us. 911, there's a lot of proof or theories that, this was the day that Jesus was actually born, not Christmas Day. I don't want to, go back and forth on this, but I'm just trying to show examples of how they use these special dates to trick us and to gain our energy.
Yeah.
There's many forces on our earth. We eat cows. Cows eat grass. Grass eats dirt. Well, believe it or not, things eat us. And it's just a reality that people won't be able to handle. 99% would be in the hospital if they really understood the truth. Our governments in the world are not being controlled by people. We're sheep, no matter how you want to look at it. No matter how intelligent a person may be, you're not even close to being the smartest one on this planet. Period.
Let's take a look at these, and this, like you said, Steve, the sense of humor that you get from this. There's Pepe. So I'm gonna screen share. Greg, which one did you want me to screen share? Let's go with the cryptic communication style. So, and a lot of people, wonder like, why do we need this cryptic? Actually, that's not the one I wanted to screen share. Sorry. Why do we need this cryptic?
That brings up a great subject that you had brought up earlier of how the laws are right now that the government's allowed to lie to the people through propaganda.
Right.
So that's what's happening also with Q. This is a propaganda thing. It's a way of using the laws to your advantage. Okay. We'll go back to
Let me explain that a little bit.
Were we on air talking about my military career, or was that in private?
No, no.
Yeah, no, that's private. That was private. That was all private. Yeah.
Exactly.
So let me just explain what he's talking about here. The Smith-Mundt Act from the 40s was established to ban the government from creating propaganda, to using propaganda against citizens. In 2012, President Obama repealed that, which then allowed for deception from the media. It allowed for the Mockingbird media to legally give us misleading, wrong, and fake news. And of course, to even engage in these false flag operations that were used to take our guns and our Second Amendment away and encroach on our constitutional rights here in the United States in every way possible. So,
and they made it legal. And they did it
made
to make it
legal.
legal.
And made it legal. No.
Yep.
So
how do you fight that then in court, right? You can't.
That's why some of this can't be disclosed, because at this time it's legal. How do you explain this to people so they get their mind around it? I mean, some of us figured it out, but not everybody will. Like, people aren't going to understand that if they haven't studied it. But here we have this Q post that you sent, this Pepe, which explain the whole Pepe part of this whole thing, because in the Bible it refers to it's like biblical, or there's like a lot of biblical things involved in this. I mean, go ahead and explain that.
Well, I believe that if it hadn't been for the fact that I actually had read the Bible myself, I don't believe I would understand Q as well as I do. I was very blessed and fortunate that I was maybe, 50 pages left of reading the Bible for completely when Q first showed up. So not only was I doing Q, I was also finishing reading the Bible at the same time. And it was just a beautiful marriage between the two of them, because it was so focused on my mind. I went to read the Bible to decode and discredit it.
Ah.
And it changed me. I was a non-believer in Jesus before that moment. I was always a very religious, as they say, and I believed in God, and I always knew this bigger plan. And my plan that I'm involved in right now, I knew I was involved in this as a teenager, but I had no idea it was Q, or, you never know how it's going to pan out. But I knew that this is my future. I've always known what's coming for me.
So one of the logos, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead. One of the logos is "Where we go one, we go all." This is really what the Q movement has been spreading, across the globe. Whenever you see people have signs, they'll either have a sign that says Q, or they'll have WWG1, WGA. And of course, the "Where we go one, where we go all" was inscribed, if I'm not mistaken, on President John F. Kennedy's boat, on the bell of his boat. Is that correct, Greg?
Well, this is some of the things I've heard, both, yes and no and stuff. But it's a great, great story, if not true.
I've seen the inscription. I've seen the bell with the inscription. Can I confirm that was JFK's boat? I don't know. Yeah.
I saw the pictures of the postcard, but once again, that disinformation could be from a very recent picture from the 5th. Sure. It doesn't mean that it was from the 60s.
Okay. So, and of course, I'm screen sharing a little cartoon of Pepe doing a QAnon, news broadcast, and it's got a picture of the Q clock behind it. And the Q clock, those blue dots represent dates of actual posts. So, did you want to comment on that?
I've never been able to study or look at the Q clock. I've never been able to go to 4chan, and I've never been able to get on 8chan. It's a miracle that I'm understanding what I am right now. But because I wasn't sidetracked through all those different things, it allowed me to focus on only what I am doing.
But you made a comment about this that was interesting. You said it had to be somebody really from the inside that put this out there, because you're saying it's almost impossible for people to have figured that out and put it together so brilliantly, because things add up and line up on it too at times. So.
Okay, yes. And because of the timing that it came out, this came out before Q was a year old. This was only a few months old. I'm convinced, as I've gone on, I've got a learning curve too. I'm still learning things today about the code, because you never stop learning, right?
Sure.
But I believe that was probably a part of the Q team that put that out there They knew about it before Q was even done. I just don't see how somebody was able to do something that accurate so quickly when we didn't have enough clues yet. I could be wrong. I'm wrong all the time, you know, which allows me to keep studying and going forward. I'm not afraid of being wrong. But it does seem a little bit early for something like that to have just popped up out of nowhere.
Greg, where do you think this is taking us all? Are there codes in there or messages in there that we're just telling us where we're actually going to end?
Yes, and this is going to get really deep. And because I've read the Bible and because this is all predestined, we're in end times. And this is going to sound a little bit negative, and I don't mean to sound this way. But what's happening is our world has been so enslaved by the devil and so brainwashed that we are on a track of our souls are being led to hell. With what's about ready to come and what's happening, when Jesus shows back up on the planet, there's no longer going to be time to say, oh, okay, now I believe in you. How do you have faith in something that's a fact? You have to be able to feel it first. And what Q is doing right now is he's exposing the devil and the Luciferian energy that's on this earth. If we can come to the fact and realize that the devil is real, then we would have to know, Mary, that the opposite is true, and the devil was created by God. And if we believe in God in the Bible, we will believe in Jesus. And then if we believe in Jesus, we can have our soul saved. So what Q is doing right now is he's trying to catch and save as many souls as he possibly can before it's too late.
Interesting.
And I'm convinced of this. Absolutely convinced of this. Don't get me wrong. Time is an illusion. So is there 1,000 years of prosperity and peace coming upon the world? Very possible.
Yep.
But I believe that's already happened. And then we got it taken away from us, and it's been stolen from us, and now we're seeing the last end days. But once again, for anyone to sit there and say they can understand the Bible or that their interpretation of it is the correct one, I don't want to be trying to sound like that. I'm very confident in my opinions and viewpoints, but it definitely does not make it right for everyone else also.
Are there any specific drops that would tell you that we're in the end times, or is it just a feeling that you have reading between the lines? How is it?
Well, we can go ahead and look at Q and see how many different Bible references that are actually in the Q drops. John 3:16 is brought up many different times in many different ways. It's not just in Q drop 54, but it comes up in other Q drops too. Okay. We've got John 3:16 with a 4:10:20. So President Trump is trying to get us to realize that Jesus Christ is real. And it is real. He is real. Like I say, what happens is the Holy Ghost will come and touch the person when they're ready. There's a lot of people that believe in Jesus, but it's a grave belief. We're afraid not to believe. But when the Holy Ghost comes down and touches, when people like myself that used to go around teasing people that believed in Jesus and then go out and say, oh, I'm wrong, I believe them, we know that we're going to get prosecuted. We know we're going to have people tease us. We know people are going to hate us for saying these things. We don't go out there and try to look like a fool for no reason, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And we're being implored to put on the armor of God as well, aren't we?
Absolutely, because once again, this is, as you know, we have been discussing, this is against good and evil. And it's So here's the thing about this good and evil. It says so even in the Bible. It makes sense. If you want your power and you want your glory here on earth, there's a lot of things that you can do and pray to God. You can pray to Moloch. You can sacrifice children, and you can do these type of evil things and commit yourself to it, and he will reward you. You want proof? Look who was running our governments. Luciferian. They were rewarded with every riches the world has to offer.
Right.
They will lose everything in the end.
Well, I can't disagree with you. I tell you, I can't disagree with you. Yep.
Yeah,
right.
And then so there's proof that you can have it. You want $1 million? You can have it. You can have it. There's the songwriters who write songs about it. Movie producers write movies about it. There are books written about how you can sell your soul on the crossroads.
Whoa.
It's not fake.
Okay, so
We've all been there.
yeah, I'm on QAnon.pub, and what I did was I searched for, here it is. I was trying to search for John 3:16, but I pulled this up. I just put in the word biblical, and it actually literally says biblical. So this is June 11th, 2018. It says London Picks preview in the kill box in highlighted, it's bolded, so you can talk about the kill box stuff. Year determined, ? Relevant, it tells the year 2015-16. Find the markers. So here Q's giving us clue, find the markers, streets, surroundings, updates. This was in the UK. This is struck there. He's referring here.
Struck when they were there,
yeah. Are you, Greg, can you confirm?
Yes.
Or Steve, that he's referring here to the struck and
I believe so. I believe the timing is correct. That was exactly the time where Q released just beforehand the street cameras of what appeared to be Lisa Page and struck on the street.
And it says, joint treason, you have a choice. SIS, good agents. The time is now. Contact windows, good. Kill box, bold. Biblical. What does he mean by that, Greg? Biblical, with regard to this thread that we just read?
I know a lot of the Q drop clues, and it's impossible for me to know all of them. And once again, Q says they're not for everybody. Certain ones are for, So this particular one has confused me. The London picture Q drops does confuse me. There's a few of them that I know that the clue is there, and I just can't. Oh, it keeps popping up. They keep trying to show me, and I can't figure it out. And one of them is those. The London pictures I still quite haven't figured out yet.
Well,
but
my feeling with the... Sorry.
What I do, though, too, is I don't focus a lot of time on trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
What I do is I go to sleep, and I take that nap, and then I wake up with the answer. When I go and do my decodes, I don't do a bunch of searching and trying to figure a bunch of things out. I do my math real quick, and it just tells me where to go. I look at the clues, and they just pop out. So what it is, it's just a language. And, if anyone's ever tried to pick up a second language, it's very difficult at first, and then it becomes a little easier. And then before you know it, you're dreaming in it. Okay, and that's the part where I've come to.
I'm going to screen share just to prove that what we're talking about, that this is very biblical. I did search and I did come up with this. This is on August 15th, and there's a quote here from Corinthians, from Ephesians, again, Ephesians and Corinthians. And here's the one where he talks about future proofs past. So putting all these things together, you had another proof that you sent, or another let's take a look. Let me just minimize this because I'm using a screen share feature. So this is talking about the national security laws, Q's cryptic communication style. We talked about that. And then there's another one, credit to Anons, who deciphered the red green castle. Did you want to talk about that one? Why must we communicate this way, national security? We kind of talked about it already, but if there was something else you wanted to highlight on that.
There's a lot of things that are being put out on the Q drops to be used for those future moments. So now how I can use Q drops as communication. Now let's see, I'm trying to noodle bake a guppy. Now, there's a lot of sentences that can be in Q drops that can be used as as a language. And so when I was sending you the Q drop gaps, I only focused on, say, the one sentence. You might have tried to read the whole Q drop or something like this. But if I had a highlight, I could sit there and I can communicate with anybody through the Q drops now let me make this perfectly clear. If Q wants me to do that, because President Trump is the one that sets up the Q drops. But when the military, the U.S. Army, Marines, Navy, and Air Force start using their timed gaps in between to support that same message, then I know I'm part of a team that's trying to help me communicate.
Right. Now that's what kind of threw me off when you first started to, when I was first following you and I was looking at how you were doing your timestamp gap codes and things like that. I could follow a lot of that, but then you would throw me off because then you would get another source from, it's like, how did you know to go there? How did you know to look at the following count on, on the U.S. Army's page versus another page? But let me just, before we move on to that, let me just go to this one post that came up. This was, if you remember, when before they realized, before the deep state realized Trump was using this as a means not only to communicate to us, but to communicate to them, to give them disinfo, because Greg, isn't it right? Q says disinfo is necessary. So not everything was meant to be taken as a drop. It wasn't literal. Like when Q first came out, they said 11.3, 11.5, Podesta and HRC were going to be indicted. And there was nothing on the news about that. But did they say, they didn't say what year. So,
Exactly. And that's why I'm convinced of this 11.5 and 11.3 is
right.
That's the 3rd November of President Trump's presidency. Which is going to be next month. This is the Red October. Everybody's going to be doing, because everything's being exposed. We can see this. President Trump is literally now calling for treason crimes, not just suggesting it.
Yes. This week
so
he tweeted this. Yes, he did.
By next November, we're going to have all kinds of real things happening. The 3rd November. Now, the 4th November, which would be the election coming up.
Right.
And then there's the 5th November. Well, that's the year everything's going to be glorious. The 5th November is when the whole country will be united. Once again, these are theories. Anytime you try to, and Q says, let's be very careful about trying to predict the future from Q drops.
Yep.
Very careful. You're going to get egg on your face every time.
Right, because because disinfo is necessary. That's why.
Right.
But he also says, now, what about the place markers? That comes up interesting too. When he talks about place markers, that some people are in positions that the public sees, but they're just a place marker. They will be replaced. Is there more to it than that?
Well, once again, these things are set up because they knew that somebody was going to figure these things out. So they use that as markers. So let's say if I'm doing a gap code and it comes up on marker. Well, doesn't that tell us that this is a marker moment? I mean, it wasn't there for accident. So once again, these crew drops, they have these words in it that really, when the Q first posted the sentence, everybody's like, what does that even mean? Trust yourself or whatnot. It's there to be used as a language later. Now, if I didn't figure out this timestamp and gap code, somebody else would have been able to figure out one of the other 43 things. And if they were dedicated and kept up with it, Q would have used that connection as a way to communicate with each other once 8chan was down.
Okay.
But since I was so dedicated and I never wavered, I've kept the exact same code going. I mean, I've advanced on it. I've learned on it. I don't tell everybody what I do know about it. But what I do is and that's why I show my notes, and that's why I show sometimes posts that people don't get, is because I'm actually telling Q and showing Q that I understand what they wanted me to look at.
Fantastic.
Here's the proof. I'm following you. I got you. We are communicating with each other. And then they go ahead and teach me more things. So let's look at how President Trump uses his dots. You see him use his dots in his tweets a lot. Now, back in the day, he used to do a tweet, dots, leave a gap, do another tweet with dots. But he hasn't done that in about 3 months now. That's a secret communication that we've established in the past that I know will work, and that we've trained each other on it so well that in the future it will be used. But why would anybody put 4 dots before a sentence on the beginning of a tweet. You know, there's just no reason for that. So it's absolutely there for a reason. And like I say, I just don't have time, or my fingers are so sore from, you know, tapping and doing this stuff on my phone that I've really literally got sore fingertips. So I have to kind of even choose and pick what kind of codes I want to show everybody in a sense, because of
we're going to look at some more. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to screen share what has happened here. Once they did figure out that this was a covert way, as General Flynn said, an army of digital soldiers, this is where the statement about the digital soldiers came from, that he knew, and he was relying on these you know, these Anons to do the decoding and to understand and to communicate. And then it spread not only to just Anons, it started to spread wider on YouTube and more wider watched programs like GoldFish Report, of course. And other people started channels just when Q started. Of course, GoldFish Report had been already reporting for 2 years prior to that on news and on other intel. This was the first intel source that I think was more widely accessible, but there were others. There were, you know, people like Cobra who was on talking about intel. There were people like, you know, other people, co-hosts even that I've had, other people who I would interview who would have some kind of intel to say something's going on, there's changes going on. But here what I'm screen sharing is something that, and it's also like a proof, and I know you can't see it, Greg, but you remember when they said Q has not violated the Hatch Act. Do you remember that once they figured this out, they figured out it was somebody within the government, and they figured out they questioned whether or not Q was actually violating the Hatch Act. And so here we have, think executive branch, NSA, and it points to, you know, expressing opinions about candidates. And so this is a whole thing that the viewers can take a look at. But after this, I'm also now going to screen share what happened. What was the result? Actually, I think, oh, you know what happened? This is what happened. When I put the QAnon.pub on Google, right, I can pull it up on Google. If I try to search for something, it crashes. Every single time it crashes.
Wow.
Yeah, they don't want you doing this. They don't want you searching it. But I'm going to,
My phone's been hijacked, and I've never put that kind of icon in my phone. Somebody did it for me, so I don't have to go searching. It just automatically one day just popped up on my phone. It's really weird what's happening. It's hard to explain.
I'm going to now screen share now that we know, right? So obviously somebody's quite alarmed at what's going on here because they don't have control. See, the reason why Q had to be born, was because the bad guys have control of the media. So the president had to have his own way to communicate with the people, or the Q team, president as one of them, whoever else is on the Q team, they had to have a way that they could have direct communication with the people. Here is the search page on Google for QAnon conspiracy, right? So this is, even if I don't even put the word QAnon in here, let me just delete that and let me just search it on QAnon. It's all going to come up as conspiracy anyway. So look, QAnon disciple vandalized Catholic Church. I mean, it's such fake news.
They have disciples now.
I mean, disciples. We said it was biblical, didn't we? I mean, for goodness sake. Look, QAnon is a conspiracy that won't die. Now they realized they lost control of the narrative. They realized that whoever's idea and plan it was to create Q,
to
have direct communication with the people, to bypass the mainstream media. That's what it was all about, to bypass the control of the mainstream media. Now they have to go out and they have to trivialize it. They have to make it seem it's illegitimate some way by just calling it a conspiracy theory. But these people have PhDs in deception. They're only there to invert, to subvert, and to throw smoke screens, smoke and mirrors up to deceive you. They're magicians. They are magicians.
Exactly.
And you're saying, and you made a comment the other day, Greg, about, of course, you know, people have noticed there's pictures of President Trump holding his hands in the triangle position, and maybe even the satanic, Baphomet hand signal. There's a picture of him with that. And it concerned a lot of people because they're saying, oh, he's just one of them,
Yeah, but how old is the picture? How old is it?
Well, once again, we've been brainwashed to believe that a lot of things are evil when maybe it's not. Like if we hold our hands together and like we're praying, well, we've been taught that that's a good symbol. But what if we were accidentally taught that it was a bad symbol? Native Americans love the swastika. It's a very important, powerful symbol for them, and they've had it for thousands of years. But yet the Nazis took it over just a few short decades ago, and now we're all brainwashed to think that's the most evilest symbol that we can even comprehend.
True. But they did reverse. They did.
They reversed it too. But what we're getting at here is what you said to me the other day, Greg. And Greg's been tweeting about how much time we've spent doing pre-interview discussions. Okay, it's been a marathon, I'll tell you. It's been unusual.
Yeah.
But
and it's great. I wish we had more time and could even do way more.
Well, we have lots of time to do more interviews too, because we really want to go into looking at the proofs and getting into the detail, because, for the advanced people out there, they want to see more proofs right now. For the people who are just trying to put all the pieces together, I think we've done a good job trying to do that. Yeah, that's been established. But what you're saying is that Trump knew how the inside worked, that he is a wizard himself in the sense that he knows how to use it. He knows how to use this against them now, which is what you were saying earlier, correct?
Absolutely. And the reason I understand Q and the reason I understand what's happening so much is because I've always studied the enemy. I'm not enthralled with the witchcraft. I'm not enthralled with the Bohemian Grove. I don't care about those things in the sense of other than these sick, evil bastards. Look at these evil people. And that's what I studied, is for whatever reason. So now I know a lot of things of how they do. I can look at the churches. I go into the museums. I go into my local hospitals. I decode the pictures. I decode the structure. I look at which angle what degree the front door's at, and I can tell you that it's pointing to the Sphinx or whatever the case may be.
Understand the symbolism.
Yes, it's right there in our face. Freemasonry is a very powerful group of people that know a lot of ancient magical history that's been given to us through star people. As the example, as we talked before, anybody that can comprehend that we have a star map and thinks that it was figured out by a human is ludicrous. It's a 36,000 cycle. Who in the world recorded it for the first time to bypass it to somebody else? It came from off this planet. And these are the type of things that keep people awake when you bring this to their attention. That's too deep for their brain because they still want their Porsche. They still want their coffee latte. Yeah. Who cares about UFOs?
Okay, Greg,
I shouldn't have said that word, but
I want to go to your tweet that you tweeted, your proof now. Let's get more into the proofs that what you tweeted 3 hours ago. This says ghost timestamps equals Great Awakening. Timestamp and gap code. Same time difference from deleted tweet from yesterday. Like, this is crazy stuff. I mean, this is
Isn't it amazing?
Really wild, right?
It's mathematically impossible.
Right.
It's planned.
But it all checks out. Look at this. So same tweet time difference from deleted tweet from yesterday is 2556. Q drop 2556. Crystal clear? Question mark. Date of Q drop is 5 December 512. Q drop 512. Power to the people. I mean, this is brilliant. Trying to figure this stuff out. Then you show 4 pictures. So first of all, can we talk about this ghost timestamps? What is this? What is a ghost?
This is one of the most brilliant, geniusest things I think President Trump is doing with Twitter. He misspells words to get people to tease him and show how stupid he is. If you can have your enemy misunderstand your strength, you've already won.
Okay. Yeah. So everybody thinks he's a complete idiot, but he's really one of the most intelligent people. Well, we know that his IQ is in the top 1%. Now, when he misspells words, nobody goes and looks to see if that was a real word even. I go to the dictionary and look, I've got big dictionaries, and I'll see, oh my gosh, that's a real word. It fits perfectly, but okay. Right. So also what he does when he misspells those words, then he deletes the tweet.
Right.
Now, if there's a secret message, okay, this is perfect in how the cabal uses this. Now, if I wanted to try to sell something illegally and I've got a code word, I can send somebody a tweet and then immediately delete it. So there's no record on my Twitter page of it unless you saw for the 2 seconds that I tweeted it live and got a screenshot of it. You'll never know I even tweeted it. But the person that's receiving the tweet will always have that in their inbox, correct? So they can still send messages without being there. So they delete it. And that's what President Trump is doing, is exposing how they do their communications. So now what's happening is with him deleting a tweet, qmap.pub logs and shows all the tweets that President Trump does. It will also log and keep the log of his deleted tweet. And it does a different color change so that you can obviously see that that tweet was deleted. So that's where I'm able to go and double check and find out if he has deleted a tweet. I still have the timestamp there. It's all logged and recorded. God bless qmap.pub.
Right.
So now let's say if I want to have a secret message delivered, like the one that we're doing right now. Now, I believe that that tweet will probably be deleted today because it's showing like the one that's pinned right now. I believe that tweet will be deleted because the message has been received. We've got it. He hears what we're doing. It's for learning tools. So later on today, it will be deleted. It will become a ghost timestamp. So what it is, it's just another way of being able to send secret comms without anybody knowing unless you are wanting to be a part of that.
Unless you're a baker.
Unless you're a baker,
in the beginning, it was about breadcrumbs.
And then it goes right back
breadcrumbs, right? Yeah.
And then it goes right back into the plausible deniability, the ultimate proof for Anons. I mean, there's the message.
Right.
You can't go and double check it unless we actually screenshotted it.
So you included a few Q drops with this particular decode, and it was referencing today. So you're saying that this is the message they want to communicate today. Fake news, blue check mark, flunkies try desperately to discredit Q. That's one of them. But there's a whole, there's many sentences there. I don't know which one you're picking up. The other one, again, is talking about the blue. Oh, go ahead.
No, I think it was down further. It's the one that's, really stuck out to me.
Truth belongs to the people.
I believe so. And, it gets very hard and stuff too. And once again, these are things that I see that I'm showing and proving to Q that's there so that they know that I see it and stuff. As soon as I get a partner and somebody that I can work with that has computer skills that can highlight these things, it's just going to be, clear as day for everybody.
Right. How much attention? Also, well, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to put together, link all the things together that gave you this thread. So all the things that you posted with it, this is what's supporting your thread right here. These are the messages that, according to your decode, want to be communicated today. So this is the,
that's kind of ironic, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you think that's kind of a big coincidence?
Exactly.
Well, one of the geniuses of this Q phenomenon is that what it's done is deliberately encouraged people to do their own research. So people that may have, a lot of these things would have been new to them completely. They would have been intrigued, and it's encouraged people to dig. And since they've done the research now, it's their own information. They've absorbed it. They've taken it on themselves. And then you are the best teacher to educate somebody else. Wouldn't you agree with that, Greg?
Yes. And that's exactly what the case is. You have to trust yourself, Okay, and that's a great example of why certain Q channels right now have such huge followings. I laugh how a Q channel will take a random Q drop and just post it with no explanation. Just here's a Q drop, and they'll get 1,000, 10,000 likes.
1,000 retweets, 500 comments. And it's like, you guys are sheeple. You guys are following something blindly and have no reason why you're even retweeting it. You have no reason why you're retweeting it.
That's correct. But that's exactly the opposite of what I'm saying, is that those people aren't the ones that are actually doing the digging. So it's
no, they're not.
That's right. So it's necessary. Q's encouraging everybody to do their own research and to make it their own information. Not that somebody's told them, like the media.
Right. Exactly.
And that's why I do the style that I do. Every tweet that I do is consciously to show and teach what I'm doing.
Work it out.
Not just to say, here's a magic trick, I'm picking this one here.
Right.
Right.
It's like, I want you to see that this is an actual thing that's happening, and I want to teach you how, so that I can go surfing. As soon as I teach everybody, I can go have my life back. You know, I can then go do my thing.
You go surfing. And look, the last one that you did, okay, the last tweet today, crystal clear, question mark, timestamp and gap code, time difference between this tweet and the last tweet is 1:15, okay, whether, I guess 1 hour, 15 minutes, and then you put mirror. So you knew to mirror that. So Q drop 511. Q drop 511, timestamp and gap code is DEFCON 1 stringer marker. Condition with regard to previous post, thought clear, now crystal clear. So what was that? Can you explain what that, translate that for us?
Yes. So if we're trying to, you know, I'm trying to show how the dates are very important, you know, and we know that DECON 1 is President Trump's Secret Service code word is DECON. And what that means, it's just brilliant, you know. It's the emergency code. It's
right.
You know, the black hats are definitely knowing that he's a decon, you know, coming.
Well, this is interesting because DEFCON 1 usually indicates a nuclear threat, an imminent nuclear. Yeah, it's a signal for an imminent nuclear threat. But on the top of this tweet here, on the top of this Q drop, it says DEFCON in this case does not refer to defense R. So it says condition with regard to previous posts. People really, this is a labyrinth of, you know, of intel. I mean, it's absolutely genius.
I can't wait to the time I'm able to be on a stage with, you know, a laser pointer and you know, on a big, large screen, and I can absolutely show everybody step by step what's going on here. It's so difficult with a 140 character tweet. It takes up so much time to throw out each tweet, and I just don't have enough time and the ability to show. When I do my decodes, I'm still picking out certain things. It can get so deep on it that I'm like, okay, which one do I actually show? Which one do I actually show?
Yeah.
But with this
once you get in it, you can't come back out. It literally round robins itself all the time. I can go from one part of the map to the next just off of one decode.
All right, Pepe. Pepe, listen. I've got to cut you off for a second because we're not done. I've got to get through this one proof that you did, okay? And at the bottom of it, you took a screenshot of a tweet that the president made. And so what you're saying here is that this stringer is meant to draw your attention to this particular tweet. That's what you're saying in this drop. Is that correct? Because it says, as I predicted, this is the president's tweet that you included in this proof. Okay, it says, as I predicted, Jay Powell and the Federal Reserve have allowed the dollar to get so strong, especially relative to all other currencies. And notice how he put all in all capital letters, that our manufacturers are being negatively affected. Fed rate too high. They are their own worst enemies. They don't have a clue. Pathetic. So it seems that if I'm reading, so when I first read this, I thought that this is trying. There's a marker here saying marker. Pay attention to this. So is this what? Can you explain? If I add to that, please, why you included that?
Yes, and now there's a lot of these different kinds of clues. Okay, so now I'm not saying this is the example, but as one. Now, with all being capitalized, people are using all kinds of gematria, and their codes are correct on this stuff too, but there's more to it. So let's say
let's pretend all was soon, because that's usually the one. And if he's got 4 soons in it, you know, 4 O's in it. So like, let's say if he used, I apologize for jumping around so much like this, but
okay.
I will use that as a clue. So if I went right now, and I'm going to go look at my notes, and I look at that tweet of all, and if I bet you if I went back 3 tweets, A-L-L, and if I did the gap between those 3 tweets, that there would be a message there. I'm almost positive of it. Like I said, I've done this so much, but what's happening right now is we're trying to establish a simple, calm communication for people to follow. And what's happening right now is we're using the gap between the tweet and the first tweet, or the last tweet, and then the last tweet of the day, and then the first tweet of the last day, or any deleted tweet. But each tweet is pre-planned, so there is a message there. Now, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily for right this minute. And okay, so sometimes it takes 3 or 4 steps to get to the message, but there's no way I can explain that on a tweet without losing everybody. And people already think I'm going way overboard as it is. So, but it's all there.
And honestly, you know, the best thing to do is to screen share your proofs and you explain them, because, you know, it's really, there's so much that goes into it to be flipping back and forth between screens. But honestly, what we'll do maybe for next time is we'll have like a whole, I want it from beginning to end, the whole string of how you went back. We're going to show each of the tweets, the timestamps, and we're going to get in a little bit more detail. But you know what? It's good that we're not going that deep into it today, because it would just overwhelm some people. We want people to watch this a couple of times, because there's so much information that Greg has been sharing with us that it's really imperative that maybe you listen to it a time or two. And before, it's really kind of educational, just like the Country Road series that I used to do with Winston Shrout. Each report, each country road's built on the information of the previous report. So you really kind of had to watch them in sequence, because this stuff, the kind of technology that Winston was even sharing was very complicated as well. So it's really great. That's kind of how you do it on an educational way, is kind of you start, you have the discussion, you talk about all the things that are related to it, and we start looking at the proofs. But honestly, to get into more detail, I think might overwhelm people in just to begin with. I like how we're able. Yeah. What do you think? Do you think so, Greg?
Oh, absolutely. You know, because it is a very, very deep and complex. Now, I want to have a computer that, you know, has all these gaps out so it helps me and stuff, but it would still require the human touch and intuition to be able to decipher and read it. It's not just, there's emotion that's involved with it. There's intuition. People might not believe in psychic abilities to communicate with each other, but it's proven many, many times, you know. And so, and that's what's happening with Q and all of this. You have to be able to psychically connect to be able to read and see the clues also. And just like any language, you have to repeat these words many, many times before it becomes second nature. You don't just take the beginning Spanish class once and then you've got it. Right. You just like you said, you do it repetitively until you're ready for the next step. And that's all I did. I didn't come up with this just overnight. I worked very, very, very hard on trying to figure this out. And every time I would go to try to prove to somebody something, they had an answer that stumped me that I couldn't explain. And I'd be like, oh my gosh. So it took me, you know, all my negative things that would happen that would stump me actually taught me more and more and more. So,
I'm going to screen share. I sent this, I shared this, Greg. This is the, well, let me share it so you know what we're talking about. This is the actual big poster that has all the connections. It's just the
That's a beautiful poster.
Yeah, it's just a black and white version of it. But this is what you're talking about earlier when we're explaining, Steve. Yeah. That this is where it's all going, and this is where, you know, look, if you
it's going cosmic. It's going to go to the cosmic level at some stage.
Absolutely.
It's space.
Absolutely.
I'm going to try to enlarge
Otherwise,
this.
it's pointless. Otherwise, it's completely.
It's the whole. The picture's not complete. That's it.
It would be. Otherwise, we're just swamp creatures.
Yeah.
You know, we're Darwinism, and we're not.
Yeah.
You know.
But
Well,
it looks like that there is. So here's Q, here's Trump, here's QAnon. It says high-rank military generals. It really had to be an insider helping put this together. They're talking about everything from DUMBs to Council of 200 to
it's all there. It's absolutely
Area
all there.
50. It's all here. Area 51, crop circles, sound healing, Book of Enoch, William Pleiadian guidance, MJ12. We're talking about Mars slave colony. We're talking about Galactic Federation. We're talking about ancient builder race. You go back up and, all the way back to Tibetan Buddhism, and then
and it's all connected.
Artificial intelligence, right? The Great Solar Flash. What do you know about that, Greg? Do you know?
Well,
much?
like
It's not
I said,
part of the proofs or anything, but I mean, yeah.
Well, that comes back into what's happening. We have a dual solar system. The return of Jesus, the return of the second son, the return of the sun. It's black and white when you see it. And this is what's happening. There is another solar system that comes around every so often, every 36,000 years, and it connects to ours, and it causes massive destruction. It could cause a flood. It can cause polar reversals. It could cause ice ages. There's been many civilizations on this world that's proof. We see this, the cities that's built in stone that have disappeared, just disappeared. And these are the type of things that, once again, that keep people asleep. Look at the pyramids that are all around the world, and people pretend like it's just
coincidence,
and we can ignore it.
That's right. That's right.
And we can just ignore it.
No. People think that people built those by hand with like pulleys and levers. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I know.
I build rock walls.
Yeah.
I build rock walls. I know what it takes to build a rock wall. It's not easy. It's not done by hand. These rocks. But once again, then we can go into all types of things. A lot of these rocks are alive. Everything on this earth is alive. We just live in such a weird, cloudy, and once again, we have to be careful about going too deep, because we're just trying to talk about Q versus philosophy.
The universe.
But as you were saying, it is all connected.
Exactly.
It's absolutely.
Well, that's what that graph that I just shared was explaining. But you're saying, I mean, one of the first things, and what Q repeats often, is patriots are in control. That's huge, right, Steve?
Yeah, well, that gives us hope. But my big question is, since we're talking about the Q map and the cosmic level, who thinks Trump is going to is going to make disclosure happen in our lifetimes?
It's irrelevant. It's not important.
Why?
Let's talk about, is the world flat or is the world round? Does it matter?
Well, I think it does matter. I think it gives us a complete picture of our place in the universe, that it will fuse the humanity together rather than us fighting each other. And that's been their method of control, by the way. It's divide and conquer. So if we realize we're simply one race of millions, gazillion races around the universe, we'll realize that we are a race on our planet, and that will fuse us together. That's my belief.
Well, and I agree with you 100%.
Right, but why would Satan only stop at deceiving us about who's working in the government? Why wouldn't they deceive us about what the true nature of our world is? Greg?
Like they've done.
Right. So, we have been completely brainwashed.
Stay hidden. So
we have been completely brainwashed. But it's the Great Awakening. These solar flashes, the reason why we're watching the Schumann frequency, right, is because we're waiting to see where these solar flashes are coming in. These big waves of energetic bursts are helping us raise our consciousness so that many of us will wake up. But Q also says, first Q said 60-40. Remember that? 60-40 referred to 60% private, 40% public. And then Q changed that to 80-20 because it's so disturbing. Because honestly, look, I've talked about this before. If you're going to tell the people, if you're going to tell the society that your world, your reality is not real, they're going to go crazy. Unless you have something to replace it with, you can't tell them that their whole reality is fake. Yeah, and that's, you know, you've been living a complete illusion, and your parents have, and your grandparents have, and nobody knew it.
And
so
you were voting for them and supporting them.
That's right.
We were asking for it.
Right.
Well,
and you were fighting me and you and other people. You were actually arguing, fighting, and belittling them when they were telling you the truth.
Sure. So I think that the 20% is the Q population, that they're ready for the hardcore evidence. They're being told in roundabout ways what's really going on, and they're being urged to dig through it. The 80%, I guess, the plan is just to have an alternate reality. Hopefully you will restore your republic very soon. And that's what I'm hoping as an international patriot. I'm on your side.
The world is, I believe.
Yeah, as soon as you do it, the rest of the world has hope. That's how I see it.
Right.
Yeah.
And it looks like,
you know, and Q says, you know, not everything's going to be clean and swift.
No, can't be.
And that's the John McCain that's being discussed. Now, if there's a person that's real powerful and has no name, and we've never known them, and we can't even go and research them, why would they be brought up into the public view and say this was a bad person, this is what they did, and now we've executed them? Well, just get rid of them.
Doesn't make any sense.
Get rid of them and make it legal, but the public doesn't have to know. So I think that's a big part of it too, of the clean and swift. You know, do we ever really need to know that John McCain was the traitor publicly? Not really. He's just gone. He's done his damage. We're cleaning it up for the safety of our America.
That's true.
Right.
For people who don't need to know the whole
just move
picture.
forward.
Yeah.
Well, and plus Q says, you know, the truth, the truth is not for everyone. I'm sorry, the end is not for, or the truth is not for everyone. So it's kind of like,
we can find out right now John McCain was a traitor. We can find out all of the bad things that he has done. It's proof. So it's already out there. Do we need to make it that much more public? No.
Well, that's an excellent point, because the information is out there. It's up to the individual to seek the information. So you're right, Steve, about what you asked about before, Steve. Absolutely. The president's not going to announce everything. It's not going to be a big, what happened? The U.S. Navy put out press releases. Yeah, there's disclosure. It was out there. But it's not going to be like, you know, it's not going to be like this mass, you know, sighting of UFOs suddenly appear. It's so Hollywood, right? So, you know, could it happen? I'm sure it could happen. But, you know, the U.S. Navy, you know, had a press release and talked about it. It was all over, actually. I mean, we had actually some smaller mainstream media outlets actually covering the fact that, you know, they have established new protocols for reporting UFOs. And they said, you know, maybe you shouldn't have done that because, you know, the UFOs are really real. You know, these were real incidents. And of course, we know that because Project Blue Book was created at the end of the 40s and into the 50s to control I would say, hysteria that people were having when they were seeing these things. Because we were using nuclear weapons, and that's when they appeared. They're like, you know, you can't have this. You people can't do this, and you're not supposed to have this technology. And that's why
all the nuclear codes going blank on the same day, you know, in the 70s and stuff like this. You know, this is impossible without it being a higher power. Absolutely impossible.
Well, this whole Q thing, my feeling is, I mean, I may be wrong and I can't prove it, is this is a military operation that's been decades in the planning. The whole Trump presidency has been a long time in the planning, and this is simply the timed release, reacting to day-to-day changes and fluxes within the field. It's that has to be taken into account. Obviously, they're reacting to a live situation, but this has been planned for a long time. Trump was meant. They must have had something on him too. They don't let anybody come anywhere near the presidency that they don't have control over, so they think.
Correct.
So it was a double deception. There was a double deception, I'm assuming. They expected Hillary to win. Trump was going to be the fall guy. They had enough. They were going to throw all this stuff at him that he was going to be so unappetizing to the population of the United States. The exact opposite happened because he was so honest. And he spat the dummy. He just, as we say in Australia, he just decided to speak from his stomach, and people got it. And he spoke the truth, and the military operation kicked into force. My feeling is the end game is the reinstating of your natural constitution, and that is my prayer.
Yeah.
That is my prayer.
Indeed.
And I think what's also so important that people don't understand is why he talks the way he does is because what was happening before is they were trying to take away our freedom of speech. And so if you're not allowed to have, if everything has to be politically correct, that means they're controlling our speech.
Right. Oh,
I'm allowed as an American to say anything I want.
Second Amendment.
You know,
not exactly. Not exactly.
Well,
I did
right. I mean,
a whole literature review on that. There's limitations. There's definitely some limitations.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah. But not to sit there and say, well, whatever, you know. But we can see, and that's what attracted me to him right away, was that he was destroying PC. And that was, with me, I was like, oh, wait a minute, he's got a plan. Because you don't run for president trying to use cuss words and calling people names. Just this week, you know, and his whole presidency, if you're going to run for president, you need the news to support you to get the message out to the people. And his message from day one all the way up until today is, screw the news. I don't need you. You need me. If it wasn't for me, you guys would be done right now, and I'm going to get rid of you. So, you know, he's doing absolutely the opposite of what anybody should be doing to actually win.
Well, what about this whole idea? Q always says optics. So, you know, when a president says fake news, you know, you really should pay attention to that. He's not, I don't think this president says anything, you know, I don't think he says much accidentally, quite honestly. I think when a president of the United States says something, you should pay attention to it, especially this president and in these times that we're in right now. Optics are everything. So optics plays a huge role in this because we have to unroll this, right? We see how long did the Mueller, you know, nothing burger play out? How many millions? $32 million and nothing came of it, right? And it dragged on and on and on and on forever. And it was just like beating a dead horse. And I really hate that expression, but it's like the same thing with impeachment. I mean, what's brilliant about the military component behind this is how they are causing the enemy within to expend all of their ammunition, right?
Every time.
Yeah. And so they're desperate now. They're like desperate, scared, you know, rats in a corner. Because, what's that?
You know how I know that they've given up and they just know they're on their last death throes? Adam Schiff and Kamala Harris and a lot of these, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, they all had those bug eyes. Remember the last couple of years, their eyes were popping out of their head because they were lying and never blinking. Look at them right now. Yeah. The last 2 or 3 days, all of them have sunken eyes, and they have their demeanors been sucked out of them, and they literally know that they've completely lost. Their eyes are being sucked because they're not trying to lie anymore.
Mrs. Cumming.
Well, Nancy Pelosi seems to be propped up by a beverage cart of some kind, so, you know, I'm not quite sure what she's been drinking.
And some snow.
Yeah. So learn.
Well, I want to know where Ginsburg is. You know, see, here's another big thing, you know, of optics.
Formaldehyde.
You telling me that President Trump doesn't know where she's at? You telling me that the other Supreme Court leaders don't know where she's at? All of our Supreme Court judges right now are lying to the public.
Of course.
Every single one of them. And that's a crime. Yeah. But because of what we were talking about, the security bill laws or the, you know, of it's being allowed and overlooked. But right now, I'm very disappointed in our Supreme Court to sit there and not ask the question, where's Ruth? But I understand and trust the plan and know why it's there.
Trust the plan. Exactly.
Yeah, well, I feel what I would be it's being timed. Yeah.
If it wasn't for Q, that's exactly the type of stuff I'd be talking about on, you know, screaming at the top of my lungs. How can we go around with the Supreme Court when we can't even prove that she's alive?
Yeah. True.
Exactly.
No one can prove she's alive.
No.
No one.
Right. So let me just...
once again, you know, I mean, people really need to wake up. And when I do my Q truths and tweets and stuff, you know, I've got all kinds of different personalities that come off, but most of them are, you know, confident and cocky and pissed off. I am pissed off that I'm involved in a Q community that's pretending to be the smartest people around. And really, I'm really very proud of the Q community, and I'm embarrassed of them at the same time that it's taken them this long to wake up. If you already know what's going on with Q and you can't jump to the next step,
Yeah. Well, people have got to sharpen their game. We've got to be smart. We've got to move forward as a race in order to outwit our slave owners. Basically, that's what
slave owners.
Yes. Right. And that's a great thing. You know, if we watch that movie, that cartoon, which I'm totally against cartoons, but Animal Farm, you know, written by
Orwell.
Well, he did that in 1984.
Orwell. George Orwell.
Right. You can find your character in that movie. If you're honest with yourself, you'll see which farm animal you are. And it's a great movie if people really want to psychologically see who you are.
That's right.
Yeah.
One thing I want to talk about, though, here is our beautiful, wonderful First Lady who wore that dress with the Q on it, which I think I have a picture of. I'm looking to see if I have it. And, I mean, how brilliant is she, always out there trolling right next to her right next to her first man there, huh? Greg?
Yes, she's something else. She, once again, she's one of the master trolls. We can dissect her pictures.
Yeah.
There's so much there. So much there. Her pictures aren't accidental. She's a model with a professional photographer. Nothing is accidental.
And what about Q? Remember Q Baby? That was an interesting one, wasn't that? Did you remember Q Baby and what exactly, how did they know that was going to happen, right?
Well, that came up on my post, right? That's on the 2438 post, right?
I'm not seeing it, but I was asking about it.
If you go into the tweet, it will show that Q Baby. Now, see, this goes really deep. I can't explain to you right now how manipulative all this is, and we'll kind of leave it at that for right now. The Q, it's much deeper. But I don't know how they do it. I really don't. Now, I believe in time travel. I believe in MK Ultra. I believe in, super soldiers and this type of thing. I'm a direct descendant of the Wright brothers. President Trump is related to Tesla. If flight and time wasn't somehow another connected there, I don't, what else can I say? I don't always know how it works. I don't understand it because I'm not supposed to, right? Otherwise you'd go crazy. How do you live? Already, how do we live in society knowing what we know and then go to the supermarket and watch the people's carts and see what they're buying? And you're just like, oh my gosh.
Well, that's the thing. The banality of life is hard to look at once you realize how sick the world actually is, how the leaders, what they're involved in, the child sacrifice, the torture, the genetic manipulation, the everything. Somebody who's done research, I'm sure you would agree, looks at that Q map and says, hey, I know almost all of this, if not all of it. I've never seen it put in one place. Right. And then once you know that, you can't sleep. You can't really sleep. You can't rest till other people know about it. And that's why I guess we're all here,
And that's why I get mad at people saying, give me all the truth. Give me all the truth. No, you would not want to know the truth.
No, not when you want to, when you learn about what's on that Anthony Weiner laptop. There has been, snuff films on there. There has been really horrific things, how they torture children before they extract their pineal gland and their blood. And they believe that it will keep them young if they drink the blood of children.
It does.
And when people stop
vampirism is real.
Vampirism, yeah.
It's real.
Crazy, isn't it? Mm-hmm.
And once again, that's the sacrifice to Moloch that we're talking about. This stuff really does happen. And it is something that, buyer beware.
Well, that's why the public can't, these things can't necessarily be announced by the mainstream media. Well, let's just in closing, let's just talk about, and here's, I'm going to just show what you were just talking about when it comes to the First Lady, because she's so wonderful that I have to pay homage to our wonderful First Lady. And I can only share one screen at a time, sadly, but here is the First Lady wearing this beautiful dress that has a beautiful hibiscus on it. It's a gold-backed dress. How many more messages do you have to have, right? And then when you look up what this particular flower represents, you see that the flower itself is referred to as perfect storm hibiscus. No coincidence. So of course she's a master troll. You have to love her white hat and Michael Jackson smooth criminal look in
A
front.
sartorial troll.
You know,
Masters. Yeah. They are just masters. And that's part of Q. You know, these. You know, a smart man like President Trump wouldn't marry somebody that couldn't intellectually stimulate him. You know, it's just not possible. You know, and so she's obviously a brilliant mind. The two of them have produced a brilliant child. You know, their IQs are, you know, would astound people. But once again, they've also got the training. All of us would be able to be at this type of level if we were brought up under those type of schooling and mentors and stuff, you know. So
and you know, she's
and we look at the Bible. Show me one person in the Bible that wasn't a sinner, no matter how great of a leader they became or were. There was always stumble blocks in every single person's life. We will always fail. No matter how good and how wonderful I try to be, I will still fail in the future. I will make a mistake that I will look back on and be embarrassed that that was the choice I made. But that's the lesson of the trust yourself, to go forward and to try not to be perfect, because you're not.
So
when we try to be perfect, we just get too lost.
So here I'm going to, I'm screen sharing a photo. It was not that far away from the end. You know, Q hasn't posted since August 1st, so it's been 2 months to the day today. And of course, this is October, Red October, and I think there's going to be a lot of things happening. But here we have the picture, I think this was at Camp David, of the Q ball, where they had the Q ball in the center of the, you know, the whole pool tables lined up with the Q ball.
Right.
You remember that one?
I do. And there was probably like, I saw maybe 5 people do different decodes. I even did my own.
Yeah.
And they all made sense. You know, I mean, how can so many people, one picture and it all? It's genius.
And you know, the seal of the president is on the pool table. So you have the cue ball lined up with the seal of the president. I mean, come on, you know, if people can't put that together, then there's no hope for them. You know? So look, this has been a really incredible conversation. I mean, we really would love to do it again, so we can take it up a notch and get into some more of the details of the decodes. So, Greg, would you like to come back and join us again so we can continue this in another time?
It'd be absolutely an honor, and just we'll look forward to it greatly. And I'll try to be more prepared.
Yeah, you know, because I think initially it's kind of like we see, you know, because this is so visual heavy, this kind of interview. So I've been screen sharing, and I know that you haven't been able to see that because you're dialed in, you're on audio only, but there's a lot of visual, and I think that the people need to see the visual. So sometimes if I pull stuff up a lot. So
I wanted to say this for a few things that I think might be real important for people.
Okay, sure.
Is that everybody's worrying about time zones and stuff like this. And what works with the timestamp and gap code that is absolutely crucial, and the whole crux is that no matter where you are in the world, the time between tweets is always going to stay the same. So it doesn't matter if you're trying to log and track this in Pacific Coast time where I'm at, or in Austria where you're at, Steve. It's the time in between the tweets is always going to stay the same for us. Therefore, no matter where you are in the world, we can all keep track of the exact same gap.
That's right.
Okay, it's about the gap. It's about the gap.
And then that way we're not trying to worry about, well, was it at 6:45 Eastern time? Because that's not what it says here. You know, who cares?
True.
It really doesn't matter. It's just the time in between. And then that keeps it simple.
Well, I can't believe how long we've been talking.
We're going to make it short today, weren't we?
We were going to make it short. I know we might have to break this up into 2 parts, but this is why 10 hours of pre-interview. This is how it was with me and Greg. It was just like we could not stop talking
about it.
Well, it's such a phenomenon. I mean, Q has gone all across the world. We were starting to see people on Twitter initially posting pictures, and then you'd find, Q was taking pictures off Twitter and using them in their posts. And, you never know who, then it's a big deal, because then,
like again, with him Q putting my picture up on the Q board, this started me being a decoder. I saw my work on there. And so my ego went and tried to find stuff out, and it led me to a certain song on YouTube, which then just made me go, wait a minute, there's something here. So I decoded the song, and I was like, this is guaranteed a military thing, because it matched up to the Q drop. And then that just got the whole ball starting, and I was like, oh, wait a minute.
But I'm also sure it's because you could interact.
I might not have done what I did.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because you're saying that you're following your intuition, and that's what this whole thing is about, trusting the plan. It's about believing in something and trusting something, because the reason why it's so important to trust the plan is because when you've been down the rabbit hole, and that's what we call it, right? Follow the white rabbit, Q Anon. That's what they talked about, right? Follow the white rabbit in the beginning. We've lost that for a while, but it was about this rabbit hole, exactly what we're talking about. This rabbit hole is this other world, this strange and other world. It's a reality that we didn't know existed, but in fact, it is the reality that exists. And it's their home. And unless you go down that rabbit hole and you're confronted with it, when you walk into a courtroom and you find out you have no rights, and everybody in the United States is thinking, oh, we're protected by the Constitution, we have rights. You go into a courtroom, they're like, the first thing the judge says is you have no rights. And, you're standing there saying, what world are we in? What are you talking about? Because
and most people just go, okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
They have no idea why. They have no idea how it happened. They have no idea that we're all being used as surety to pay for the black budget debts of of our slave, our overlords. And, it's time to change, though. I mean, the GoldFish Report started talking about the change from 666, which was the satanic rule, to 555, which is for the people. So there's,
I like it.
This is what 555 represents, right, Steve?
As far as I understand, yeah. I haven't found it with it, as far as I understand, yeah.
Yeah, so it's the code, and because, they talk in code. So the 555 represents this change. It's a change for the people. And if you could do tarot or numerology, fives represent change. It's a card of a number of change. So this is the big shift and change that's supposed to be happening. It includes a new financial system. It includes more, I would say, like Nasara and Jasara, which are they're basically like, for lack of a better word, I would say either guidelines or protocols, treaty, you might want to call it, that all countries of the world are going to have to be in compliance with in order to reevaluate their currency, in order to have fair and even trade on the planet. Because it was all, the destruction was terrible. If you were a country that didn't partake with these controllers, the central banking system, they would bomb. They would bomb you, right, Steve? Look at Libya.
Right, yeah.
Exactly. So this has to do. Exactly. And, and the problem was there has been so many whistleblowers that have come out who have been killed because they tried to say, there's a rabbit hole, people. Open your eyes. Look at Phil Schneider was trying to talk about what happened down in Dulce, New Mexico, with these alien base underground. And, yes, there's aliens, there's gray aliens. Yes. Have I seen one? No. But from the research I've done, I believe there's a reason to believe that there's evidence to support it. I've seen pictures of the people who have been brought back after they've been mutilated, after abductions.
And, then let's go into the cow mutilation.
The cow mutilation. The fact that they're using us as a farm, like you said.
Right. And it's just that people need to stay asleep so that they can go to their jobs that they hate, so that they can then hopefully spend enough time and money for a Saturday evening fun.
But honestly, I don't think it was meant to get this out of control. Steve, what do you think? Steve?
I don't know. I think it got out of control in that they believe that we're too numerous. There's too much population. They just want to reduce it to a more manageable level. We're the useless eaters. I think that's the only way that it really got out of control. I think the control, according to them, is actually going to plan with all the electronics, the surveillance system. They've got the Chinese now that can manage a crowd of 100,000 people and lock them all into to numbers and database. So it's I don't think that they're out. I believe that in a way it's out of control, but I only think it's the population for them, from their perspective.
And I agree with that. And that's why this Twitter is so important with what we're doing. You know, this was designed for their benefit and their nefarious ways. Right. But we've taken over, and they can't let it go because they still use it. So they can't just exit off. Then they would have no way of communicating with each other. But because of Q and all the other decoders, we are now taken over, and we're trolling them. If you go and look at QAnons, they troll the most powerful people in the world. We
absolutely.
We just troll
hilarious.
And we're sending it straight to the government officials' offices.
Yeah.
We're calling them on the phone. We're hassling them.
Yeah, I mean, look, they created Facebook. They created, essentially the internet arose for them as a tool to spy on us. But we ended up, they didn't foresee that this was going to unite us all, no matter what their plans were.
It used to be, now if Hillary was in, Google would be in power, and they would just censor anybody. They would put us all in this echo chamber. We would think we're talking to somebody, but we wouldn't be talking to anybody, and we would just be exposing ourselves, and they would come and collect and round us up, and we would just disappear.
Well, gentlemen, we can keep this conversation going. And Greg, this happens to me. Greg, we're doing all this pre-interview time. So let me just say, Steve, is there anything that you want to ask Greg before we start wrapping up? Because we do need to start wrapping this up. We're having such an amazing
maybe not today. I'm just thank you for coming. I think it's been great to have somebody that understands these things to be here today, and also to put out your message to a new audience as well. And thank you. Just thank you for all your work.
Thank you, Steve. And I'm sorry that we didn't get enough time to be talking one-on-one with each other because there's a lot there. And I look forward to much more time with you.
Likewise.
Yeah. And so it's been a pleasure. And Steve, thank you so much for being here, because always Steve
Great fun.
Steve's just a wonderful counterpart. He always has, the best comments and questions that I don't think of. So it's always great to have Steve join us. So, and Greg, thank you so very much for this incredible, amazing conversation. I hope people will re-listen to this, because there's so many breadcrumbs in here, right, Greg?
Well, it's all about freedom. If we don't have freedom, then we wouldn't be able to have Anons that are able to create this type of thing and to do this. If we were subject to, communism, there's no creativity, there's no goal, there's just no freedom. And this is what Q is doing, is he's allowing us to show the world, if we're given the opportunity, we will rise to the occasion.
Yes.
Man, we'll do it.
Amen. Amen to that. And that's what we're showing. That's what we're doing. Absolutely. So Greg, thank you. The guy that talks to Q, thank you so much for joining us today. And it's been a great pleasure. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Can I just finish off with this one word?
Sure.
All my glory is because of Jesus. Absolutely nothing that I'm doing would continue forward if I was to take credit for it myself. This has been a gift given to me by the Holy Ghost and Jesus himself. Amen.
That's beautiful.
All right. Yeah, and I said that one of the things that I said to Greg when we were working on this, and I realized that he wanted to teach people how to do this, was I said, well, you came to the right place if you wanted to be a fisher of men.
People like goldfish.
Join us on. I said, welcome to the fishbowl. And this is it. I mean, there's no coincidence, and that's really how we hooked up and got this all going. So all is good. Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you so much. I'll see you soon. Greg, we'll see you back soon again. And folks, I hope you enjoyed this. Please leave your comments in the comment section. Questions that you might have that we can bring up for the next Q interview. And just want to thank you all for viewing. And also, that's all we have. So that's it, folks.
Well, next time.
You have a great week. We'll see you. We'll be back next week for another POTUS report. So you want to watch out for that. And we'll be back as soon as we can. We'll do another part 2 of this, and we'll go into some more proofs. So having said that, this concludes this edition of the GoldFish Report. Thanks for viewing.